as you join in, please continue to introduce yourself within the chat. We are so excited to have Carly here from MemoryFox for the Storyteller's Guide to Event Excellence from Start to Finish. Just for context, my name is Lisa. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at Mighty Cause. Just a couple of housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded and it will be sent out in a follow-up email as well with a copy of the slide deck. So don't have to worry about that being provided to you. I'm having a little bit of internet delay, so I might freeze here or there, so I apologize. So I'm just gonna turn off my camera, turn that on. And as well, we'll have some dedicated time throughout the webinar for questions, but we'll also have time at the end for questions. But I'll keep track of the chat as well as the questions tool in the Zoom control panel. Before I just hand it off to Carly, just for those of you who have joined on and are not familiar with Mighty Cause, we've been in the nonprofit space since 2006. We're one of the biggest technology providers for giving days across the country, but we also are a year-round fundraising tool for nonprofits. So we offer different tools such as a CRM donor management tool, donation processing, peer-to-peer, and more. So that's just a little bit about us. But I'm going to pass the reins off to Carly, which we're so excited to have, and just a brief introduction about her. So after nearly 10 years in the nonprofit world, Carly joined MemoryFox ready to elevate the hundreds of nonprofits in the community by telling stories ethically and authentically. Carly is the creator of the 2023 and 24 ethical storytelling reports and has previously held positions at the Breast Cancer Coalition of Rochester, the Wiley Network, and the Code of Support Foundation, where she is specialized in special events, communications, and fundraising. Storytelling has been an integral part of each role. So I'm so excited for you to kind of talk to us about storytelling. I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, thanks for having me today.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you. Oh, you can? Okay.
Okay, I was gonna say, I don't think I'm muted, so hopefully that'll work.
Okay. I think it was just having audio issues. You're good.
Okay, fabulous. Let me get this started. Oh wait, actually 1 second. I need to remember to share my sound. That is always something I forget. Let me see here. Share sound. Okay, how does that look for everybody? We can hear you. I love it. I can hear you. Okay, great. I'm so glad you can hear me because I got a lot to say. So, fabulous. Let's hop right in. I am so excited to be here today. I am so glad that Mighty Cause asked me to join us. And, we're going to have Mighty Cause join us at the end of this month too. Or next month. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, just like, I'll hop right in. So just like Lisa said, my name's Carly. I'm the marketing director at MemoryFox. Yeah, she gave me a great intro. I will say that I always like to, she already mentioned all the stuff I've personally done. But when I intro myself, I think about how all of us, we work at certain causes, we volunteer for certain causes, but we also support other causes, right? So I always like to shout out a few other nonprofits that I personally love. And the ones that I would love to shout out today would be Flying Kites, the One Love Foundation, and the Anna Shelter, which is where I adopted my dog. But in terms of today's journey, kind of have like 4 sections to today's presentation. So number one, we're going to talk about all the ways you can incorporate storytelling before, during, and after your next fundraising event. Then we're going to talk about strategies for actually collecting community stories, which you will do all year long, so you don't ever feel like you're scrambling to find those stories. Third, I want to talk a little bit about some ethical storytelling practices and anonymous storytelling standards and ways that every nonprofit can participate in storytelling. And then finally, I would love to answer any questions you have. Like Lisa said, we can answer questions throughout. We can answer questions at the end, whatever anybody's thinking makes the most sense for them. And then I'll wrap up with some free resources for you all. So as long as that all sounds good, I'm gonna hop right in. All right, to set the stage, let's just think a little bit about why is it even important to use storytelling at your event? There are a lot of good reasons, and I recognize that there is an irony in me sharing some stats to prove how important storytelling is, but no matter what, I'm going to do it. So, number one, we know that storytelling will help you raise more funds. There was a study done by Classy where they found that fundraising campaigns that incorporate video receive 114% more funding than campaigns that don't. So, that is a pretty stark statistic. I mean, just having fundraising videos be a part of your campaign is already going to make you raise more funds. Number two is that stories are more memorable. There have been a lot of organizations that have done studies like this, but specifically coming from the Stanford Graduate School of Business, they found that stories are remembered up to 22 times more often than facts alone. And that's really because, telling stories is something that we all do, right? There was another study that said stories make up 65% of our everyday conversation. So it just makes sense. That's how we function. That's how we relate to things in the world. So that makes sense that that would be a lot more memorable than just a fact alone. And finally, at this point, storytelling is simply what people are wanting in terms of consumption. So, Sprout Social found that 62% of users said that they have become more interested in a product or a brand after seeing it in the form of a short form video. So, yeah, we're seeing, of course, TikTok is a great platform where people are engaging with videos, Instagram Reels, Facebook Watch, YouTube. Everybody is really loving talking or communicating with brands through videos at this point. So here's just one extra little nugget to say, hey, this is something we should start doing at our nonprofit. All right, so you probably already know, like I said, I got those great stats, but also you probably already knew that storytelling is important, right? I mean, people talk about it in pretty much every webinar. Everybody's always saying, oh, we got to use it to connect with donors. We got to use it to connect with prospects. We got to use it for stewardship, all this stuff. But the real question and why we're here today is to say, like, hey, where do we even start with storytelling? And specifically, we're going to talk about storytelling as it pertains to your fundraising events. So, really, when it comes to storytelling, we have to think about all of the different touch points that you have available and therefore all of the different options that you have to actually communicate with people. And then we can start thinking about where storytelling fits into all of them. So, specifically thinking about before your fundraising event, here are some of the storytelling touch points that you might have before your event has even started. So, just going through the list here, we see, your website and event registration pages, your save the dates or your invitations, whether those are virtual or whether those are actual hand direct mail pieces. You have social media posts, you have email promotion, newsletters, local radio stations, your pre-event reminder emails, those emails people get after they've already registered to remind them, what to wear, where to go, where to park, stuff like that. And then community influencer accounts, people that are in your community already that are part of making your community events more better known. If anybody has any additional before touch points, drop those in the chat because I'd love to add to this list. It's an ever-growing list. All right, so one example of how you can implement storytelling into some of these touch points, I'm going to first start with email promotion. So I'm positive that you're already using email to encourage people to register for your event, but how can you stand out in inboxes, right? That's the key to getting people to open your emails. I would say a great example is to consider writing your email from a unique perspective. So a program participant, your program manager, maybe a board member who's going to be at your event, someone that your list is not used to hearing from. So if you always send your emails from your CEO or from your marketing director or from your director of development, let's put somebody else in the driver's seat and let them really be the face of that email. And of course, your email, because you are asking people to sign up for something, it has to include all the usual info, right? It's got to have your date, your time, location, stuff like that, your dress code. But in terms of storytelling, we really can take it one step further by including a snippet of a success story. which really is just going to entice people to not only register for your event, but to come and feel really excited to learn more. So here's an example. This is actually a photo of my own father when he was in the Marines, because it's easy to get permission to use a photo of my own father. But this perspective in this example comes from when I worked at a veteran service organization. So um, two kind of options that you can use to add a snippet of a story into an email, and that would be kind of using a before photo or an after photo. So if you are including something with a before photo like the one I have here, you could say something from your program participant's perspective that says something like, hey, when I joined the Marines back in 1984, I never imagined I find myself struggling to put food on the table 20 years later. Okay, that's got me thinking about where this story started, and then we can tell you at the event where the story is going to go. Or another strategy is to start with your after, right? So do you have to, a good question, do you have to attribute the quote to a real person? Well, particularly if you are planning to share a success story like on the big screen in a big video or something at your actual event, it would be great if you use snippets of that actual part to get people wanting to learn more about that particular story. So in that case, yes, it would be a specific person. But yeah, another great way to get people involved would be to kind of give a snippet of what happens after, at the end of working with your nonprofit. So an example of a sentence that you could include might be, I'm so grateful for the assistance I received. I haven't felt this hopeful since the day I enlisted. I can't wait to share my story with you on Thursday, September 9th. Right? Like, come see my story, come listen to the rest of my story. Let me tell you about all the parts of my story. All right, another really cool example about promoting your event with storytelling before your event has to do with local radio stations. So I'm here to tell you today, local radio is not dead. In fact, many radio stations, they have segments that they have specifically set aside to promote local community events. For free, they're looking to fill these slots with community events for people like you that are putting on great events like this to help causes in our community. So, um, you can snag a spot like this simply by reaching out. And I will say, I didn't even know this was a possibility, but then when I worked at the Breast Cancer Coalition of Rochester, here, right where I live, I just shot emails to the 10 local radio stations, and I was so thrilled when 5 of them said I could come on and do a spot. I mean, I felt like a local celebrity, right? I got to come talk about the event. But in terms of actually incorporating storytelling, I would say, once you find a time to head to the recording studio and share all those details about the actual upcoming event, make sure you do put some storytelling into it, right? Maybe it's your founder's story. Maybe it's the origin of this specific type of fundraising campaign you're doing. Maybe it's even your own story of why you work for your nonprofit or why you volunteer for that nonprofit. Something like that is really going to get people to better understand the work that you're doing at your nonprofit and make them really want to come meet you at the event, but also come be a part of something that's bigger in their community.
Carly, we have a
Yeah.
question about radio. Someone is asking, I'm a small nonprofit. How can I get on radio in LA? So maybe if you want to speak to if you do live in a larger city, maybe how you can reach out or what talking points when you're
Yeah,
reaching.
so what I did, it is obviously different because Rochester is not as big as LA. But what I did is I had an intern that that was a high school intern, and I asked her to just comb the internet and try to find contact information for me to reach out to all the local radio stations. And that's how I really just sent emails. I did like a cold email style, told them a little bit about me, told them a little bit about the event, and I was really thrilled that people did email me back. So I do think that maybe it might be worth just trying, even if you are a small nonprofit in a big city. But yeah, I imagine they still want to promote community events there.
Awesome.
Great. Cool. No, love that question. Love that question. Okay, so let's move right along and let's start talking about storytelling touch points that happen during your event. So again, if anybody has some more touch points to add, drop those in the chat because I'd love to add more to this list. But here are some that I've come up with. So you have your actual slide presentation that maybe is going during your happy hour, maybe going during your cocktail hour. You have video testimonials, which is a super common way that people, put a video testimonial up on the big screen. You have inserts you could put into your goodie bags where you could talk about where you could share a specific type of story that people could take home with them. You have your cash call descriptions or your paddle raise. I know some people call it a paddle raise, but within those descriptions, what are you describing that the money is going to serve? You also have your auction item descriptions, which is one of the examples I'm going to share. You have signage that you can place in strategic locations, the actual speeches, maybe from your founders or from your board members that they're sharing. You have table tents sometimes on your tables, your actual event program that people can flip through, and finally, photo displays. So let's talk about some specific examples. All right, my first example for during an event here is an actual photo display. So I know you probably already know that the key to an engaging in-person fundraising event is to have people be able to do things during that downtime, right? People want to network, yes, but let's also make sure they have something to talk about and something to do. So usually that when we are thinking about kind of filling those gaps, we try to find ways to fundraise, right? Which is totally fine. But those would be things like a silent auction or a wine pull. Or sometimes we provide a way where people can have a little extra fun, right? They might have a photo booth, or you have like a special maybe dessert station where people can, pick their favorite treat. But I want to say, don't forget to provide a way for attendees to actually learn more about what you do. Because if they are at your event, it's likely that they don't know everything about every program, but it is also even more likely that they are interested. So this example in this photo here comes from when I worked at the Breast Cancer Coalition. And kind of how this came about is every year we had a group of survivors that we, talked to about sharing their own stories on our virtual channels. So on our social media, on our newsletters, and on our website. But at our actual in-person gala that year, we decided to take it one step further by displaying their image and their story beneath. You can see the stories are actually beneath the photos here in the image. So attendees could actually read their stories in real time. The best part was that some of these ladies were even able to attend the event. Um, and that meant that they got to represent, show themselves in person and represent themselves as being a part of our mission. But they didn't feel like they needed to stand up and actually relive any of their story. It was already there on display, and they didn't have any pressure to stand at the podium and read their story aloud. So this was just another way where people could intake several stories if they felt like it, if they were looking for something where they wanted to learn more. And it really was a great way to pay like a nice honor to these women that had already so gracefully shared their story with us. Another interesting way to add storytelling into your event while it's happening would be your silent auction descriptions. So I have run my fair share of auctions, sometimes with hundreds of items. Raise your hand in the chat if you have had over 100, 200 items in your silent auction before. Because I'm sure that if you're going to raise your hand, then sometimes you get items that are just not that glamorous, right? And one way you can spice up your silent auction descriptions, especially for those items that need some extra spice, is adding a storytelling twist. So let's take this toaster, for example. Here's how you might traditionally write a silent auction description, right? So kind of option number one, or traditional way, which is the Breville Force Slice Smart Toaster is a top-of-the-line appliance. You can leverage its smart capabilities by connecting this toaster directly to your smart device. Donated by James Robinson. Okay, pretty standard, right? It says what it does. You've got, it says who it was donated by. You're paying homage to that. But let's consider what an item like this might sound like with a storytelling twist. The Breville Force Slice Smart Toaster is the premier appliance for all your toasting needs. With its smart capabilities, you can say goodbye to the days of burnt toast by connecting this toaster directly to your device. Generously donated by James Robinson in memory of his late wife Jane, an avid supporter of your nonprofit for 25 years. He lovingly remembers the many mornings they shared over a slice of toast and a hot cup of coffee. Now that you've heard both options, one with a storytelling twist and one traditional, I ask you, which one are you more likely to bid on? I mean, we're talking about a toaster here, right? I know for me, option number two is where I would want to be placing my next bid. All right, another great example of storytelling during an event would be signage. So, selling signage is a wonderful way to honor your community while raising some extra funds. So, we probably all know that we try to sell ads in our program and in a physical display to local businesses. That's how we raise money, right? It's part of a sponsorship package. But you might be surprised to learn that if you offer these options to your broader community as well, there might be some other people that are willing to share. So this specific example comes from the Pink Ribbon Walk and Run. I was the race director of that. And during what we did is during the registration process, so while people were already signing up, we asked our community of survivors if they would like to purchase a sign in honor of or in memory of someone, but it would be an additional fee. We were thinking, maybe we'll get a few people, maybe we'll get this, just the people that we kind of already know about in our local volunteers and stuff like that that would be interested in doing this. But we were floored when we actually received over 50 attributions. So what we did, and kind of a trick to making sure that we really do honor these stories, um, we sectioned off a quieter, kind of more secluded portion of the course and we deemed it our warrior walkway. We placed a sign at the very beginning that asked people while they were walking or running to remove their headphones and consider ending their conversations or pausing their conversations so we could really hold space to honor these folks. I mean, I can remember being there and actually, when after the signs had been set up, I was walking by just to take in the beauty, and I'm still getting choked up thinking about it because it was so wonderful. And what we did afterwards is we, of course, picked up the signs and we let people take them home if they wanted to, or we offered to store them to use again the following year. Love this warrior walkway so much. Oh my gosh, yes, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think it really turned out really beautiful. How much was the signage to the donor and how much did they cost to print? Great question. So in this particular example, I believe we charged an extra $100 for them to for like the sponsorship for the signage. I'm not sure what the cost was to print, but we did have a graphic designer on our team who was able to do the designs herself. So I think in that way, maybe the cost was a little bit lower than perhaps some other signage. But I will say we were offering signage to sponsors anyway, so we were going to be creating signs either way. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, moving right along, let's talk a little bit about storytelling touch points after your event. So here's a list for you. We have your follow-up email. You probably might send a thank you card or a thank you video, thank you letter, something like that. You have social media thank yous. You have all of your reflection posts that are thanking everybody. You have maybe a wrap-up article that you post on your website or on socials or in a newsletter. And then you also could have a story page, and I'm going to explain more about that in just a minute. All right, so one really fun example of a great way to tell a story after an event is through a thank you video. So actually, this specific example is actually a multimedia approach to thanking some of our biggest donors and our biggest sponsors. So after our gala, we actually sent handwritten notes in the mail. And what we did was we included a QR code on that note that opened up into a thank you video that was housed on YouTube. So what we did specialized videos for our biggest sponsors. You can see this one says thank you Salvatore's, which is a local pizza shop here that is a huge supporter. But we also recorded one more generalized video that we were able to send to several people. So this is kind of a way, when you give people a multi-channel option or a multimedia approach to being thanked, you're really meeting them where they're at. So you're able to say, hey, if you are fine with reading my note or keeping my note, that's a great way for you to connect with me. If you want to open up this video, that's a great way for you to still hear this. We really want to make sure that people are consuming your message in the way that they actually want to consume it. Okay, another great example would be in your follow-up email, of course. So if you have a success story, especially a little snippet of somebody that's showing your boots on the ground work, maybe in real time, maybe out in the wild, this would be a great spot to slot in one of those and let people know, hey, the donation you made is going to help more people like this. So even if this wasn't your story that you shared or not your big story that you shared at your gala, it's okay. This is another example that people can connect to. So I'm going to let this video speak for itself, but this is coming from our friends at Kids Help Connections.
I love the mentors, and I love that they help me and they motivate me and push me up when I'm feeling down and I stop or I'm say I can't do it. They always say I can't, but I always say I can't, but they always say I can do it. Never say you can't. So I love that they motivate me all the time, and we're strong, fit kids.
All right, so you have an email going out already that says, hey, thanks so much for coming to my event. Thank you so much for your donation of this amount, or for supporting our Warrior Walkway, or for supporting our wine pull or our silent auction. Here's an example of somebody that your dollars helps. And it's just this short little snippet, right? I mean, I always feel so much happier after watching this video. It doesn't need to be something long. It doesn't need to be something overly produced. Something this simple is really what people are engaging with these days. All right, my final example when it comes to showing being able to tell stories after your event is this story page. So this would be kind of taking that one snippet, but putting it into a whole page with a lot of videos. So this specific story page on this, in this example, comes from our friends at the Community Foundation of Martin St. Lucie. They actually use a story page to as a donor stewardship tool. So after an event, to show their gratitude. So what they did is they asked scholarship recipients to record themselves doing a thank you video. And they asked if they could please do their thank you video somewhere, one of their favorite things that they experienced during the semester. So you can see here, just as these videos go by, this is people in their labs. This is people in dorm rooms. This is people on field trips, in classrooms, a full spectrum of experiences. But the really cool thing about it is they're all essentially saying the same thing. They're saying, hey, thank you. Because of you, I got to experience this great thing during my semester. And when you put them all together here, the donors are able to see, you can click through and see several stories. You can read one, or you can just take the visual in as a whole. All right, at this point, it sounds like people seem to maybe connect with some of these examples. Maybe you're thinking of some ways that you could implement them at your nonprofit. But I know that I always get asked this question, and that is, okay, well, how do I even start collecting stories? Because, if I'm going to do some of these things, I need some stories. So let's talk strategies. Here's my first strategy for you, and that is to generate a domino effect. So while you're at your event, you could actually consider having a story booth instead of a photo booth. So this could be a station that is super fun that people want to engage with, where people could have a chance to record why they're giving, why they attended your event today, what it is about your mission that they find so compelling, or even what it is about your mission that they are the most connected to, right? Or why they volunteer. Whatever it might be, have some prompts ready, have somebody ready to record them, and give them a chance to actually say their piece. And the cool thing about generating a domino effect is that when you actually see people contributing, when other people see people contributing at an event, they're going to say, hey, I would like to go share my story. Let me make sure I get over to that station and do that when they see some other people doing it. Extra points if you want to equip your attendees with some themed props, maybe a fun backdrop, really kind of amplify the fun. But either way, I would just say don't obsess about the lighting. Don't obsess about making sure that making sure that that there's no background sound or anything. Phones are actually really good at just creating, phones and iPads, tablets, they're really good at just grabbing that one voice in front of you. But really what you want to do is focus on being authentic and making sure your videos are real stories from real people. So don't overthink it, give it a try. My next my next strategy for you is to designate a content collection champion. So, this strategy is when you actually take one person, one volunteer, one staff member, probably a volunteer though, because your staff is probably doing a lot of other stuff. But to actually say, hey, here, I want your only job today to be to capture videos and photos of the people at this event. We actually had our friends at Wounded Warrior Homes do this at their golf event, and they were able to capture 240 videos and photos just by being at the check-in in the beginning of the day, as well as standing at one of the holes during the day. So, some things that I would recommend if you're going to use this strategy. Give your content collection champion kind of a list of shots you're looking for, of videos you're looking for, of things that they can kind of wrap their mind around that they actually can capture for you. I also would recommend, if possible, perhaps having someone a little bit younger be your content collection champion, since they usually are a little bit more able to use technology, more quickly, make sure those angles are good, make sure the lighting is okay, stuff like that. So if you are able to find a volunteer that's maybe a little younger, that's willing to be there all day and be your content collection champion, I highly recommend it. Good question. Okay, so Ruth asked, do you need to get release forms from everyone you are videoing and photographing? So yes, that is a big thing for us at MemoryFox. We actually have built, the way our system works is people actually can't be recorded or submit videos unless we have gotten their consent. So that is something I highly recommend. If you are thinking at your event that that storytelling is going to be a big part of your event, and I hope it is, I actually have been recommending to people that while people register for your gala or for your golf tournament, you say during the registration, hey, we are planning to have a photographer, a videographer, we're planning to take photos, videos, stuff like that at the event. And you can have people either opt in or opt out. Of course, if people do opt out, you would need to have a system in place to make sure they are not in those videos and photos, or at least not in the ones that you end up sharing later. But yes, I highly, highly recommend that you do have release forms from everyone. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. All right, my third strategy actually comes down to how you're actually collecting those stories, which is asking great questions leads to really great answers. And what I mean by that is everybody is not a natural born storyteller. So it's really essential that you move people beyond simple open-ended questions where they're just really not sure where to start or they're not sure what to say, and instead ask a targeted question that is going to elicit the emotion you're looking for. So for example, instead of saying to someone, tell us about your story, where they might say, well, I'm not sure where to start. Do I start at birth? Do I start as a teenager? Where would you like me to start? Instead, ask them a more targeted question like, how did our organization help you overcome the challenges you were facing? Or if you're talking to volunteers at your event, maybe grabbing some content from them, instead of saying, tell us about the volunteer work you do, where they might just list off kind of logistics back to back of what they've actually done, you want to ask them something that's going to elicit an emotion, like, tell us about the first time you volunteered with us. How did it make you feel? When you ask great questions, that's how you're going to get the answers that you actually can use, that you actually are going to find that will help you raise funds later. My final strategy when it comes to getting started collecting great stories is probably one you've heard before as a fundraiser, which is people can't say yes unless you ask, so you cannot be afraid to ask. This photo here is a picture of myself with Vietnam Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Barney Barnum. I love this photo because it reminds me of a time when I was just trying to see if we could get anybody that I used to work at a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. So there was a lot of people around that maybe could come to our event. And I wanted to invite people that I knew had really wonderful stories and invite them to share them. So Barney Barnum, he actually served as the Assistant Secretary to the Navy in 2009. So he really is like this national hero. And we asked him to attend the event, asked if he was open to maybe talking a little bit. And he was thrilled to be invited because you know what? He couldn't say yes unless I asked him. But anyway, he ended up going on to make a donation. He talked to lots of people in the room. People were so excited that he was able to attend. And he ended up opening up more doors to more funding for us down the road. But really, this picture is kind of a symbol of a bigger strategy, which is creating a culture of storytelling at your nonprofit, really being comfortable asking people, just like you do for fundraising, when you are able to really create a culture of storytelling where everything that you're doing with your organization is a two-way conversation is so important in terms of collecting more stories. So every correspondence you have with your supporters is an opportunity for a conversation. And that means conclude your monthly newsletter by asking for replies. You never know what people might say. End your social media post by asking for people to comment. Really, just as a general idea, think about how people can talk back with you, how you can be in a real conversation with them, because the more you ask, the more stories you'll collect. All right, so those are my strategies, but I do want to say, as we are getting close to wrapping up, I want to acknowledge that I know that everyone is not able to be on camera, maybe because of comfortability, but also because of safety reasons. In fact, oftentimes we have been asked a version of kind of this important question, which is, what do I do if the people I serve have sensitive stories they might not want to share? In fact, in the first ethical storytelling report, the one we published in 2023, we actually found that 58% of our community said that they struggle with wanting to collect stories from their community while doing no harm. So while, not re-traumatizing people or not putting them in a position where they feel like they need to share their story. So I want to say, if you feel like that you fall into that 58%, and maybe you have a mission where you feel absolutely under no circumstance can the people that you serve be on camera or have their faces in photos, I just want to quickly share some anonymous storytelling strategies with you today. So in the report, there's a whole section that goes in depth for each one of these. Obviously, I don't have time for that today. That's a whole nother webinar that I'd love for you to attend sometime. But kind of as a quick overview, some things you could do is record a voiceover testimonial. So that would be if someone's willing to write down their story, but not physically say it on camera, or not physically say it on camera. You could ask permission to use your own voice to tell that story. You could consider sharing from another perspective. So thinking about not just your program participants, but your board members, your staff members, your donors, your volunteers, who else at our organization has a story to tell. You could write a composite story, which is a term for using pieces of several stories together to kind of show a representation of the people that you serve. You could build a composite video, which incorporates a lot of short clips of your mission in action, maybe not even parts of your mission that have people's faces, but things that you're doing in your everyday work life. And then put that voiceover over it, put that music over it, put a statistic over it, and really kind of make it a nice composite video. You could generate images and videos using AI. That's not personally something that I recommend, but that is an anonymous storytelling strategy that I have seen nonprofits use successfully. You could use visuals that relate to your mission. So if you are maybe talking about a big transition that's happening in people's lives, maybe you are having some situation where people are making, again, a huge transition or a huge transformation, show a visual that can show that. Like if somebody packing up a suitcase and walking out the door, that there doesn't have to be a face in that. You could just have the suitcase be in the shot, right? That's something that would be a visual that is going to show your mission. And finally, one I do want to get a little bit further in depth today is telling the story of an object. So this was shared with me by our friend T. Clay Buck, and he said the agents of good in Canada did this strategy brilliantly when they told the story of people experiencing food insecurity through the point of view of the delivery truck. So what they did is they actually took a phone and they put it on in the delivery truck facing forward on the actual dashboard, and they recorded their day. So they recorded the journey that the delivery truck took. And then they wrote this great story about all of the things that happened with the delivery truck that day and how it impacted their mission. So, they stopped and got gas, which meant that they could travel so many more miles, which meant that they could actually serve so many more families. They talked about how they had to put air in the tire because it was a little flat, which actually let them move a little faster, which actually let them get to more people than they had originally intended, and so on and so forth, right? So you can picture that great visual and you can write that story by personifying that food truck. And you can really see how doing that is going to make your mission feel really relatable to humans. But of course, you don't all work at food banks, you don't all have food delivery trucks. But a couple other options might be if you have an after school program or a summer program, you could tell the story of a brown paper bag and how that bag has a certain type of strength that holds food in it that really gives the nutrition to your students, and how that's going to help them with leadership skills, teamwork, learning how to read, whatever your mission is. That brown paper bag is a part of it. Maybe your nonprofit builds homes. You could talk about the hammer and all the work the hammer does. Of course, we know a human is using that hammer, but what is it that the hammer is doing? How does a hammer go about its day when it comes to building homes? And how does that relate to your mission? If anybody hasn't gotten a copy of the ethical storytelling report, I'll drop the link in the chat when I've wrapped up here, but I highly recommend getting it because that's just one small portion of the report. The whole report is a compilation of strategies from 30 different experts, boots on the ground, nonprofit professionals, thought leaders, and they all have a unique perspective on ethical storytelling. So it's ethical story collection, trauma-informed interviews, stereotype stories, consent, privacy, stuff like that. So highly recommend. Like I said, I will drop the link in the chat. But to wrap up, I do want to leave you with one final thought today. Because I think sometimes if you haven't started storytelling yet, you might just think, well, I don't have anything I could talk about. I don't have any stories, at my disposal. But I want to say that really you can make anything into a fun, compelling story that can be shared. So this comes from our friends I Would Rather Be Reading. And this is part of their Who Did It Better series. And it's between the kids and the grown-ups. And this is their disco version. I have seen this video 1,000 times, and I always forget that girl goes into a split at the end. I just think that is the best. But yeah, what great stories do you have at your fingertips? I mean, really, let's start thinking outside of the box. Let's do our storytelling before, during, and after our events. Let's get people at our events capturing stories in real time. There really is just no better way to connect with donors, to prospective donors, to sponsors, to everybody in your community than through the power of storytelling. So I'm so excited that we have plenty of time to answer questions. I will say that thank you all so much for joining me, for listening to me talk for 45 minutes. I have a MemoryFox goodie bag for you, and really what's in the goodie bag is a bunch of free resources, including the ethical storytelling report, if you didn't get that yet, as well as an offer for everybody who's here. We'd love for you to book a time with us to learn about your ethical, or so we can learn about your storytelling goals. We'd love to work with you if you think it'd be a good fit. And when you do become a storyteller, we would, give you a 10% back donation. So that's it for me. Now I would love to answer any questions.
Yeah, and just also a follow-up to that, as I mentioned in the beginning, we'll send a follow-up email with the slide deck and the recording,
Yes.
and there will also be a direct link to the goodie bag in that follow-up email. As well, after this webinar is finished, there's going to be a Zoom survey. If you want to stay connected with MemoryFox in the survey, you can let us know as well, if you want to stay in touch with MemoryFox. But there were a couple of questions that came
Okay.
in. One of them being kind of going back to radio or maybe in general press and media. Before going to radio, do you need to give them a press release, or can you talk about press releases a little bit?
Oh, that is a good question. Do I need to give the radio station a press release?
That was the question, yes.
Oh, in my experience, I haven't had that come up, honestly. I haven't had anybody mention that. Usually what I would do when I tell them that I'd like to be a guest on their show is I say, we would love to obviously share the segment out afterwards. We would put it in our newsletter that would go to this many people, so they know that they are giving back to the community. But I haven't come across that as a requirement, no.
Okay. And then how do you go about inviting someone to your event without ever meeting them? Do you have any tips for that?
Oh, like meeting them in person or like
Yeah,
finding.
if there's someone that you want to invite to an event that you don't have a personal connection with or haven't had that connection with yet.
Interesting. Well, I know personally one big way that people get in contact with me is on LinkedIn. I think if there is, especially like local community influencers or maybe like community leaders that you're looking to like invite to your event, I would definitely connect with them on LinkedIn and give how you can like you can personalize your connection. You can say something like, "Hey, just super interested in if do you know about our nonprofit? I would love for you to be a part of it." Of course, offer them a free ticket if you really do want them to come to your event. Don't make them pay, especially if they're going to be a special guest. But you could say, "Hey, we have this special guest ticket for you set aside. We'd love for you to come to bring, a plus one, and we just really love the opportunity to talk more with you." I mean, of course, just like my strategy, which said, don't be afraid to ask. I just think you can't be afraid to ask, and you might ask 20 people and one might respond, but hey, at least you got one more person that you're targeting, right? Like, I just feel like let's not worry about rejection. Let's just focus on those acceptance, right?
Yeah, and LinkedIn is a really great advice as a place to reach out to
Yeah.
people. Um, so do you have any also tips for organizations that, how do you tell stories for those who aren't able to tell themselves? So animal organizations, environmental causes, etc.
Oh, that's a great question too. So, obviously, I shared that example at the end of maybe like personifying something that isn't able to, speak for itself. I talked about an object. Of course, animals and trees and things are not really, they're living objects. But that's a great example. I also think like, well, in terms of like animal service organizations, we work with a lot where they talk about kind of like alumni stories, right? So that's like the animal that's already been adopted and some updated photos of their new life and the good life that they have now. So that's kind of one strategy. Um, I guess maybe just thinking through those anonymous storytelling strategies and thinking about how those might fit into your mission. If you don't serve humans, that is a good place to start. I also would say, like, when it comes to that example of like the delivery truck, for example, you can use AI, you can use ChatGPT to like get you started, right? You can ask and say, "Hey, what are some strategies just for me to get started?" And then of course, add your personal flair, add your personal statistics, the things that really are important to your organization into that. But I think when you're thinking about kind of personifying something that isn't a person, of course, it can be a little hard to think like, where do I start? So I would, if you want to work with ChatGPT or another AI as like a storytelling partner, like a brainstorm partner with you, I think that's a great way to really get some ideas flowing.
Yeah, and just having seen, yeah, just everything you've kind of shared also, it seems like there are also people who are really passionate about those causes and
Yeah.
probably, sharing those stories of why they love your cause and why it's important to them.
Yeah, we always talk about the power of different perspectives because every different perspective in your community is going to connect with somebody else. So, a donor just saying why they give to your cause, why they think your mission is so wonderful, or why your mission is so compelling, might compel other donors. If you're looking for volunteers, have your volunteers give a little bit about what they do and why it's important to them, or why they have found it fulfilling for them. That might, bring more volunteers in. You just don't really know when you have more stories that you're able to choose from and send out. You're just never really sure exactly what's going to connect with what individual person, and that's why it's always great to have like a great story bank of a lot of stories.
All right, and then we have a couple more questions. My nonprofit is in the initial startup phase. We could likely get stories from people impacted by the issue, but we couldn't get after or impact stories of our organization. Would it still be impactful to get those before stories showing the need and importance of our nonprofit?
Oh, yeah, like why people might come to your nonprofit, like why they might be interested in working with your nonprofit. I think that's a great story to tell. I also think if you are brand new, that probably means that you have a really great founder story. You maybe have a really great like thing that happened to you or in your life or that happened in your community that sparked the idea to start your nonprofit. Like, why are we here? What problem are we solving? Um, those are really compelling to people, especially for brand new nonprofits. It's also a really great way to, start with a new fundraising event, right? Like, hey, this is an exact thing that we're looking to solve in our community, and I'd love to tell you about why I founded this, and let's talk about like our vision for the future.
Awesome. How often or long should a nonprofit share a particular story? Should they be different for events versus emails, newsletters, etc.?
Okay, love this question. So, I do another session about ethical storytelling specifically, and this is something that I cover, but um, so I'll try to keep it short for now. But what I recommend to nonprofits is that they have an what I call an ethical storytelling standards guide. So in that guide, you're going to have part of that guide is going to be your nonprofit, what you've mutually agreed upon as the guidelines for your nonprofit. So I've seen nonprofits that will say in their consent forms, we would like to collect this story from you. We are planning to use it for 2 years. And afterwards, after we've used it for 2 years, we'll check back in with you if we want to use it again. So that's an example of standards you can set for yourselves. My recommendation is to be realistic about what you can stick to at your nonprofit. If you are very small, you might want to make your standard like 5 years or something that is something where you really realistically can check in after some time. But we find that sometimes I should say that stems from this concept that consent for a story is should not be considered in perpetuity. We should not just say, you told me once that I could use this story and therefore I can use it forever. We really do want to put some sort of guideline on it. And that's going to help you in two ways. Number one, people, when you check back in with them, they might have an update for you. They might have a bigger story to share. They might have something else that's happened that they have now referred people to your nonprofit. They have now become a volunteer. Maybe they've become a donor. Maybe there's something new to that story that you can add. Or on the flip side, they might come back and say, first of all, they might not answer you, which is a pretty good indication that you shouldn't use their story anymore. Or they might come back and say, that's not how I see myself anymore, and I no longer would like my story shared in that way, which is something that we should recognize and that we should respect, of course. So, definitely, I recommend having some sort of parameters on how long you plan to use a story and to be upfront about that with your storytellers.
That's some awesome advice. Yeah. I don't see any other questions coming through. So, as I mentioned, there will be a follow-up email with all of the information, the slide deck, the recording, as well as a link to the goodie bag if you would like that. Please feel free to complete our survey if you want to stay in touch with MemoryFox. And also let us know, Mighty Cause, if there's any other topics you want us to cover for future webinars. I'm so happy to see in the chat that so many people found this super insightful. Thank you so much, Carly. I'm glad this was really helpful to so many people. And yeah, I hope everyone has a good rest of their day then.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much for having me. If anybody uses these strategies, hit me up. Let me know. Follow me on LinkedIn. Talk to me. Like, let me know what you used. Let me know what worked for you. I can always add new examples to this presentation if you come up with something really good. So I love it. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for everybody who came to listen today.
Awesome. All right. Have a great afternoon. Bye.